Hello everyone and welcome to a brand new hardware review, today with a gamepad, namely this one, the T1s, a brand new gamepad made by the people at Gamesir, who also made the G4S, which I believe was the first thing we actually had on a hardware review. This gamepad is a bit more, I wouldn't say budget oriented, but it is kind of cheaper than this one by about 10 bucks. This one, by the way, I believe has actually gone down in price. I believe it was around $70 when I first reviewed it. Now it's hovering around 50 to 60, and this one, yeah, this one tops out at 50, but you may even get it for about 40 or maybe less depending on where you get it from. And is it worth getting it for your gaming needs, be they on PC, on PlayStation I believe actually, and of course on Android and even iOS actually, because this is a more multifunctional device than this one was? Well, stay tuned to find out, but first, I'd like to thank the people at Gamesir for actually giving us this review sample and letting us keep this and the one they sent Raul as well, because, well, there were some issues that did indeed need further testing with a second controller, and it's a good thing they sent two of these to us. Now, let's get on to the proper review. Probably the first thing you'll notice is that this thing is not what you would call, well, similar in shape to this one. Whereas this tried to emulate an Xbox 360 controller, this one goes for the more traditional Dualshock PlayStation kind of format. And it's an okay format, it fits my hands actually quite okay. Gotta say that the thumbsticks are a bit farther apart and a bit smaller than they were on the Logitech gamepad that I have somewhere around here, and is currently probably should be set on fire because there are things living in it right now and they're growing sentient and planning to doom mankind, but that's a whole other matter. It's actually, it's a very well made in terms of shape, like it fits my hands okay. Still wish it was a tiny bit bigger, but the essentials are here. My fingers are able to grip both thumbsticks absolutely okay with no issues. They are a bit smaller than I'm used to, but they do have this concave shape, meaning that there is no chance I'm actually going to drop them by accident. They grip the fingers quite well. And something that I really love to see, the buttons, the shoulder buttons, I can press them from any angle because they are actual buttons you press down and not the lever kind that you have to pivot, you know, like these ones were. It's a very good improvement and I really like it. One thing I'm not all that fond of in terms of the way the buttons are positioned or the way they're made is that the triggers themselves, they are kind of short. And this actually plays a bit of a role with something I'm gonna talk about too in a moment. One other thing you may notice is that they no longer have a home button like like this one had, which indicated quite clearly exactly in what mode the gamepad was. Instead you have all your options in this a little bit here that lights up. I'm actually gonna light it up with the home button that's on the back. And this will indicate in which mode the gamepad is currently set to. It's not set to any mode right now because it's not connected to anything, but you can see it light up and it works just fine. We're gonna close that. Hopefully that didn't actually blow the chroma key behind me because there's a green button here and I forgot about that. You may notice that there is some sort of texturing on the edges. You may believe that this is rubber, but it's not. This is actually just plastic. It's made completely out of plastic. Even the thumbsticks, they're also plastic, but they do have a texture to them that sort of gives them the, I wouldn't say feeling, but the approximation of rubber, at least in terms of grippiness and aesthetic. It is not the kind of plastic, the fine type of plastic that currently probably is home to the next phase of life on the the Earth. That's probably going to destroy the human race that my F530 has. You know, it's not that kind of fine plastic that will turn to plastic rubber that will turn into mush after a couple of years. No, it's just plain hard rubber, but it does have a texture that makes it a bit more easy to grip, a little less likely to slip, and it will help with sweating because being filled with channels and textured, it's gonna actually let some air through and you will have a better time of actually holding this in your hands for long periods of time. And sadly, there are some issues with the way that the gamepad is built in terms of design. One of the things I was actually very happy with was the buttons, like the D-pad. Well, if the camera can actually focus on me for one. The D-pad, you can see it right here, right? Individual buttons. Man, I have waited to see a gamepad to have individual buttons on a PC for so long. Well, I know there are, but I haven't had one in like the last 4 or 5 gamepads I've owned. These are not that. These, I'm sad to say, are not individual buttons. They are probably one of the worst implementations of a D-pad I've seen since... Well, it's not at the same level as the Thrustmaster Firestorm, but it is sort of an implementation that combines the disadvantages of having a rocker-style D-pad with the disadvantages of having just simple buttons instead of a rocker. And it has none of the advantages. So what does that actually mean? Well, it's like this. It's a rocker that's separated by a piece of plastic that is the front of the gamepad. This means that you're not pressing an individual button, you're still pressing on a rocker. So when you press, let's say, left, but you're pressing left a bit too, I don't know, low, you're gonna be pressing down. Here, right now, I am pressing down. This is being registered as down. This is being registered as up, as well as being left. And that's kind of noticeable in fighting games and can get a bit annoying, especially when you want some precision. I actually hope that this would finally make a gamepad useful for fighting games, like more useful than a keyboard. I mean, it doesn't. It's actually kind of bad. Like it's a bit worse than this, because this has, well, it does have kind of the same issue because it's still a rocker, but it does have one advantage. See, in a gamepad like this, with a D-pad like this, you can move your finger from left to right and you will change directions. Here, because these are separated by this big piece of plastic, which is the face of the gamepad, you can't really slide your finger from one direction to another to, I don't know, slightly adjust direction, or you just have to unpress it and slam your finger on the other direction. It's a step backward. It's not a great D-pad. It's, again, not as bad as the Firestorm Dual Analog 3, which I have somewhere around there, but it is not a great implementation of a D-pad. Either have individual buttons for each direction or just a simple rocker like on the old gamepad, because having something that's both at the same time offers no advantage and just is the worst of both worlds. Which is kind of a shame, because otherwise the design, like the way that it looks and the way it feels, is actually kind of okay. One thing I'd like to note, and it's actually quite important, is that the triggers, they have resistance to them. When you press them down, you sort of feel that they don't just go constantly up until the end. No, near the end, they have a bit of pushback, a bit of resistance. There's a spring in there that helps give them a bit more feeling, a bit more, well, even, I would say, even some extra accuracy, because when you get to the end, you're moving slowly because of the resistance, and you do have a bit more accuracy to your movement because, you know, you move slowly because of the resistance. There is, however, one tiny problem. Not sure if it's because of the spring or the button in this model is defective, but if I press it down to the fullest, like depending on where I press it down on, it will not actually stay stable. It will constantly shift. It's like the sensor is having a bit of a fit and it can't figure out exactly where it is. If it's pressed all the way down, if it's pressed 95%, 94, 92, and it keeps jumping around. But if I press it a bit more like up here, it sort of stays stable but still doesn't manage to hit 100%. I have to really jam it like forcefully, incredibly hard, like to the point where you would not reasonably do that all that often to get 100% utilization of the button of the sensor. And again, if you're gonna hold it down, it's probably not gonna stay down completely. Now, in most games, this is not gonna affect you unless you're playing racing games where you're constantly mashing the throttle and the braking, and you will notice on your speedometer, you'll notice that there's a fluctuation near the tail end. Also, in games that actually use these triggers for something that's not pressure sensitive, like attacking, for example, you will also notice this problem. You saw it in Moonfall. I believe I mentioned it in the show about Moonfall, where I could only press this about twice, and then it will lock up. It would not let me press it again because it would not register a third time, because I wasn't pressing it hard enough and it would not register. And even if I did press it hard, it would stop registering because it didn't get to the actuation point it needed. And thankfully, this is an issue that's only present on my unit. Raul's doesn't have this problem, but his does have another one that in his model, the left stick does not go all the way into the X direction, like in the horizontal direction. There's a bit of a problem with them. Again, they are cheaper models than this one, but still they should kind of perform okay in terms of actual movement, which, well, this one kind of doesn't. It's not something that's gonna be a problem in... Well, it may be a problem in some games. It will be a problem in games like Moonfall, where, like I said, this just makes the game unplayable. And you will notice it in racing games when you're not flooring the throttle, unless you, I don't know, maybe if you were to clip one of those extenders like the PlayStation has, so you'll have more leverage, maybe that will help to keep it actually down completely. Otherwise, yeah, this may be a deal breaker for some of you, which is kind of a shame, because otherwise this would be an okay gamepad. It's a very multifunctional one, like I've said. It can work on PC, either with the included dongle right here, if you want to use it in wireless mode. You also use it with the cable that comes with the device. You can also use it in mouse mode, again, like the old one, where you can use it to control the mouse. Only this one doesn't seem to have a firmware that's as stable as the G4S. I can switch from X input to direct input, and from direct input to mouse mode instantly on the fly without turning it off. I don't have to actually turn it off, then switch it back on in direct input mode, and then activate mouse mode. I cannot do that while I'm in X input mode. It's a bit more of a hassle, not a lot, but it's a bit more, especially since on this one pressing the home button will constantly, and I mean constantly, either get the Steam window lit up, or it will open your browser. It's something they still haven't fixed. I'm not sure why it keeps doing that. This one does it too, but only with the web browser, and it doesn't do it, well, constantly, but this one does, and it's a bit annoying. It also has the exact same features as the G4S in terms of providing you with an option for turbo, which you can set to press a button faster than you actually can. Something that may be useful to, I don't know, cheat in something like Friday the 13th, where you can escape from Jason's grasp more easily. And if you want to cheat like a bastard, please don't cheat. That game is already broken enough. You also have the ability to, well, change the vibration setting by using kind of the same, actually has the exact same options in terms of changing features like the lighting intensity and the vibration intensity that the G4S has. So if you've bought the G4S, yeah, this one has the same commands. If not, make sure to keep this thing around, like the manual is kind of required, you kind of need it. Otherwise you will not be able to guess that pressing, well, what was it? I believe it was left 1, right 3, and up and down changes the light intensity. I think that was it. Also, turbo up and down will change the vibration intensity. It's a good thing to have. Again, I wish they would have put them on maybe physical buttons somewhere around here, but hey, at least it works. And if you do manage to mess them up somehow, you do have a reset button, like a reset little pinhole somewhere on the back. Oh yeah, this one had it too. I don't believe I noticed that one before. In terms of performance, apart from the problem with the the trigger's not working all the way down. It actually performs well enough within reason on PC, I mean with the flaw that it has on PC and both on Android. I don't have a lot of Android games that actually use a gamepad that actually support one. I tested it mainly in Real Racing 3, I believe. It's an okay racing game, 3D racing game, it's okay. Like, you do actually have the option of accelerating and braking by yourself, not having the phone, well, the game do it for you, which is kind of standard for most racing games on Android and on phones in general. It behaved well. There was a bit of lag because it was a Bluetooth connection, but it was manageable. After all, it's a mobile phone game. You really don't expect them to require the utmost accuracy unless maybe you're doing some sort of pass through with Steam, I don't know, or maybe you're oh yeah, emulators could probably benefit from this as well, but I don't have any emulators on my phone to test it on, sadly. But again, it worked okay on my phone. It was detected from the get-go and it did not have any problems pairing or anything else. I could not test it on the iOS, but from what I've understood, while it does feature some support for iOS, it uses an older protocol that isn't in use on the modern version. So you may actually still have to get the, I believe it was the M1 that has complete compatibility with iOS. So you may still get some use out of this if you have an older iOS device with, I believe it was a some sort of arcade, Apple Arcade or iOS Arcade standard built into it. I would say the battery life of the T1s is comparable to that of the G4s. It has not really failed on me so far. I've been using it for about 2 weeks. I charged it once. It's par for the course for this kind of gamepad. They will let you play for, well, unless you play non-stop for a whole day, you can probably charge it once a week and you'll be just fine. I wish my phone had that kind of endurance, but it sadly doesn't. Well, I'm guessing this would be about it for the T1s. It's like, as a design, I like it. As a design, it's more user-friendly for me than the G4s because of the buttons on the top, like the shoulder buttons. They're just flat out better because you can press them down from absolutely any angle, and that's something I actually need. But there is the issue of, well, the trigger is not working properly on this device and the thumbstick not working properly on Raul's one. Maybe this is an issue with just the sample or the slot. I'm hoping it's not something that's well, that common. Also, getting it to switch from X input to direct input does require a restart of the require you to shut it off and start it up again. So there may be some tweaking needed in the firmware to get it to be as snappy as this one was. Currently, it actually had some problems on Windows. It sort of confused Windows a bit. But then again, this one did too when I pressed Home and B. This one doesn't have the Home and B issue, but unless I actually disconnect the dongle, sometimes it may get confused. But then again, that's Windows 10, it gets confused about everything. It does, however, work. All you have to do is unplug it and plug it in again, and it will recognize it with no problems. Yeah, if you're lucky enough to get a sample of this one that doesn't have any issues with triggers or thumbsticks, yeah, I would say it's worth it. Like, it's a solid gamepad. I just don't know exactly what your odds of getting one that doesn't have those problems are. I mean, we got 2 of them and they all have some sort of defect, which is kind of sad, but they are a cheaper version than the G4s, so no, that still doesn't excuse it. Yeah, I was kind of hoping that Gamesir would do better with this one. Kind of sad. Well, I guess that would be it for the review of the the T1s. I keep getting these names confused. They should probably give them more snappy names, like the Dark Cleaver, and this one could be the Boom Boomerang or something. I should trademark that. I'll be back soon with something different, and then probably the review of the phone I've been teasing for the last couple of months. See you again soon. Goodbye.